What's up developers, it's Dari here and welcome back to a new mini course where I'm going to have a deep dive into collection methods in Laravel. In this video, we will talk about the power of collections, we will walk through setting up a new Laravel project, we will set up a database connection, and we will create a migration model and factory to play around with our collections. Now, what are collections? Collections are an extremely powerful and versatile data structure that are widely used in programming. At their core, collections are simply an array, but they offer so much more in terms of features and flexibility that they have become a cornerstone of modern programming. Over the last couple of years, a lot of people ask me whether they should use collections over arrays. And I always responded saying that collections are basically arrays, but they are on a lot of steroids. One of the key advantages of collections is that they allow you to group related objects together in a logical and easy to use way. Whether you're working with simple strings or complex custom objects, collections can help you to organize and manipulate your data with ease. Now let's get started. I've already talked enough. Let's set up a new Laravel project, which we need to do through the command line interface, where we need to perform the composer, create-project, --prefer dist, Laravel /Laravel, and let's name it Laravel-collections. I'm going to cut out the part where I'm going to open my project in PHP Storm, and I'm also going to use Tinkerwell in this course. So pause the video, set everything up, and I'll see you back once you're done. Now, Tinkerwell is a PHP REPL tool that allows developers to interact, test, and debug their code. It is useful for testing purposes because it allows developers to quickly test code snippets and see the results in real time, without having to actually write a full script or run the entire application. Quick note, this video is not sponsored by Tinkerwell. I recently started using their product, and when building my database and Eloquent course, I found out how Tinkerwell makes the life of a developer easier, and especially for a tutor explaining the code. So the first thing that we need to do is to navigate to PHP Storm, where we need to open our .env file because we need to change up our database credentials. I'm gonna set my password first to Dari1234. My username is root. My database name will be Laravel_collections. The port is alright, the host is alright, and the connection as well. We obviously need to create the database. So let's navigate to the CLI and let's perform the MySQL, where I'm going to perform the create database, and let's name it Laravel_collections. Let's perform an exit right here to exit MySQL. Since we're going to interact with the database, I quickly want to create a new model and migration to have some test data inside my database. We could use the user model and migration, but the downside of using it is that it does not have that many different data types. And if we create a new migration ourselves, we could use all the different data types that we could perform operations on. So let's change directories into our project by saying cd Laravel-collections. And right here, we're going to perform the PHP artisan make me a new model. Let's name it article. We're going to add a -m flag to create the migration, but we're also going to add the -f flag to generate a factory. Once we hit enter, you'll see that 3 files have been created. So we're going to start off with the migration. So let's navigate back to PHP Storm. We don't need our .env file anymore, so let's close it off. Open the database directory, migrations, and we need to open the latest migration that we have created. Now if I scroll down right here, you'll find the schema where we can create our articles table. Now I want to keep my primary key as the first column, so in between the primary key and the timestamps, we're going to create a foreign key by saying table object, foreign ID. The foreign ID column name will be user_ID. We're going to chain the constraint method to it because it constrains the table users. And we're going to add the cascade on delete method. Then I need another column, so let's use our table object again. The data type will be a string, so basically a varchar. The column name will be title, and the title needs to be unique. Then we have our description, so let's say table, which will be a long text of description. Let's add another column, which will be a text data type, and the column name will be an excerpt, and the excerpt can be nullable. Now I want 2 more columns, one boolean and an integer. So let's add a table boolean, which has a column name of is_published, and it has a default value of false. Then I have a table integer, which has a column name of minutes to read, which can also be nullable. Before we navigate to our article model, let's quickly open our users table because I want to add an additional column which will define the user rule. This will not be the best practice when it comes to adding rules to applications, but it is just the simplest way of adding it and playing around with our collections. So right under our email verified at, we're gonna add a table, string. The column name will be role, and we're gonna chain a default of, let's say, user. Now let's navigate up. Let's open our app directory, models, and let's open the article model. Because one thing that I always forget is defining the protected fillable property, which we need to set equal to an array. And inside our fillable property, we need to add attribute names that are mass assignable. This means that you can create or update models using the create or update methods. Only the attributes listed in the fillable property will be allowed for mass assignment. All other attributes will be guarded and cannot be mass assigned. And this is basically a security feature that helps protect against mass assignment vulnerabilities. So let's add our user underscore ID. Let's say the title. Let's add the slug. We're going to add the description. We're going to add the excerpt. We're going to add the is underscore published. And we're going to add the minutes to read. So let's also open the user model and let's scroll down, and inside the fillable property, let's add the rule as well. The last thing that I would like to set up is my article factory. In Laravel, we use factories to quickly generate dummy data for testing and seeding our databases. It basically allows us to define a set of attributes for a model and generate multiple instances of that model with randomized data, which is pretty helpful for testing and development purposes, as it allows us to create a large amount of data and test various scenarios without having to manually create each record. And since we're not going to work with an actual working application, but simply going to play around with queries, we could use dummy data. So let's navigate to our factory directory, open it, and open the article factory, where we have our definition method, where we need to define the default attributes for a model. So usually what I do is starting off by defining the keys first. So let's say user underscore ID is equal to an empty string. We have the title. We have the excerpt. We have the description. We have the is underscore published. And we have the minutes to read. Now let's define the values right now. For our user ID, we're going to use our user model, where we're going to access the all method, but we're going to chain the random method to it, which will grab a random user where we only need to have the ID. Then we have the title, which comes from the fake method. The title needs to be unique, and it needs to be a sentence. Then we have the excerpt, which also comes from the fake method. We're going to chain the paragraphs method to it, where we need to pass in 2 arguments, the length, which needs to be 2 sentences, and we have true, which says that it needs to be as text. Now the same line needs to be defined for the description, so let's do that. But the description will be 8 lines and it's true as well. Then we have our is underscore published column, which is a boolean, so let's use the fake method and chain the boolean method to it. And finally, we have the fake method, which will be a random number, which will be between 1 and 10. Alright, now let's navigate to our user factory for a moment, because we do need to add an additional key value pair right here as well. So let's go right below our email verified at. Now let's say that the role of a user is coming from the fake method. It's a random element where we're going to pass in an array with 3 items. We have a user, we have an admin, and we have a super underscore admin. We're ready to perform a couple commands in the CLI. So let's navigate back to iterm, and let's first run the PHP artisan migrate command to run all migrations that we have inside our project. Alright, that was successful. Secondly, we need to run PHP artisan tinker, because we need to generate dummy data for both the user model and the article model. So inside our article factory, We said that the user ID column should have a value from the user model. So we first need to create users before we could create articles. So let's say user, factory, chain create. In the factory method, we need to pass in an integer of the amount of users that we want to create. So let's say 50. As you could see, it has created 50 new rows because the last ID is 50. Then we need to perform the same command to create articles. So let's say article model, factory, create. Now let's pass in 100 articles. In case you're being prompted with a model not found exception right here, your model namespace is most likely not being correctly autoloaded. You could either run exit and run the composer dump-autoload command to reload the autoloader, or you could simply hit the arrow up and add the model namespace in front of the article model. And usually I just find this a little bit easier. So let's say app, /models, /. Once we perform our request, you'll see that we have created 100 new rows. From now on, I want to use Tinkerwell to play around with collections. Using Tinkerwell allows me to show you what the query speed is, and it also shows what happens behind the scenes. You don't need to have Tinkerwell to play with collections. You could continue on in the same exact way as we have been doing up until this point. Tinkerwell also does not have its own syntax. I have to make that clear. It literally uses Laravel. So whatever I'm doing, you can do it too. So I'm going to quickly set up the routing for developers that are going to follow this course but don't have Tinkerwell. So let's perform an exit right here, and let's perform a clear as well. And right here, we need to create a new controller through the PHP artisan make me a new controller, and we're going to name it article controller. Then we need to define the route. So let's navigate back to PHP store. Let's open the routes directory web.php file. Where right under our welcome route, we're going to use the route method, and it's going to be a get request. The endpoint will be /articles. The controller will be article controller. Class, comma, second value of index, which will be the index method inside our articles controller, which we basically don't have. So let's navigate up, open the HTTP directory, controllers and article controller, where we're going to define a public function index. So whatever I'm going to do inside Tinkerwell, you could simply replicate by defining a variable, setting it equal to a query, and then add a dump die to it. Quick summary, in this tutorial we talked about collections, the differences between collections and arrays, and when they are useful. We have set up a new Laravel project, database connection, created a migration, model and factory, and we have also generated dummy data. In the next tutorial, we're going to have a look at collection methods we could use when working with numbers in Eloquent. If you do like my content and you want to see more, leave this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button.